Hi, and welcome to Ion Radio. I'm Ken,
I'm John.
and today we're going to go through our series of Rebel Commanders. Once again, these are ranked in kind of our own order of preference, not necessarily in terms of competitiveness, but in what we kind of like to play. John, what are your thoughts on what we're going to be talking about today?
Same thing. It just actually lines up. I think I have one that's actually not competitive that's higher on my list, but for the most part, it's basically just how useful they are. And it's just my current, how I like building my fleets for the Rebels, and these are the admirals that I prefer choosing. So I have a very strong feeling our bottom 3 to 4 are all going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. I suspect you're probably right.
So, just like for you guys while watching it, Ken and I are going to be surprising each other with which commander is where. We haven't gone over it beforehand, so we'll see how that goes.
All right, so we have, what is it, 10? 11.
11.
All right, so we're gonna start with number 11. So for me, that is General Kraken. And so, I mean, one of the interesting things about Kraken is that if you are moving at speed 3, you get to treat attacks as obstructed. You're moving pretty quick. There are other commanders that do similar things better. Really, that's kind of the big thing there. Kraken seems to work better at longer range. In terms of being able to leverage defensiveness in terms of his capabilities. Likes evade tokens, but if you get close to something like an ISD, you're dead. But one advantage, cheap. 26 points, not bad. They're, again, still same thing though. There are better commanders at a cheaper point on the Rebel line. We'll get to that. I have suspicions that our number 1 is probably the same.
It might be.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I have a different general, General Maydeen.
Yeah.
And for as much as I talk about liking Navigate, 30 points to do a little bit better Navigate isn't very good. So really the problem is that it lacks flexibility. Mm-hmm. Compared to other commanders that do navigate shenanigans. So if you think about it, let's just compare to an Imperial Moff Jerjerrod. Moff Jerjerrod is far better and far cheaper. And there are other Rebel commanders that will do the same basic thing to keep your ships alive or help you move or give you a token or anything that are cheaper than 30 points for that. I think I've only used him like maybe once or twice. And then I'm like, I won't use him. He's very low on my list.
I think for me with Kraken, I'm not sure I've ever used him in any game ever. And for me, Maydeen, I don't think I've used him either. Maybe once.
Yeah, somewhere around that. For me as well.
So is our number 11, so we get to go to number 10, which for me happens to be General Maydeen. I think there are other commanders that have come out more recently than Maydeen that are better and probably climbs the list on both of ours. And we'll get to him in a minute. Same thing. You don't get the flexibility. It is neat that you can kind of leverage his ability almost, I think, on any click, right? Doesn't have to be one in particular.
Correct.
So that's a useful tool. But the points, you're spending a lot of points for a little bit of maneuverability. I'm in agreement with you. You're just not getting enough for it, and there's better commanders you can use that are cheaper, that work better with different lists. I think you could potentially get Maydeen with a particular list to potentially do something, but I don't know. I think it's more of a niche build at best.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 10 is also a general, and that is General Kraken. We just flip-flopped our 11 and 10s. He's just generally bad. Like, he only works on small and medium ships, and you have to be going fast, so you lose that control value of being able to try to keep your small ships at a specific range to keep them alive. And so he's like, oh, just fly right in and die. It'll be great. And he's only blocking 1 dice, so you're spending nearly 20... He's 26 points to have to go fast, lose control of how you're actually maneuvering on the board, to lose 1 dice attack against you. And if you are maneuvering around other things that are causing you to be obstructed, then he really doesn't do anything. Especially if there's another reason for there being an obstruction, then General Ramadi still will trigger off of him. Like, no thank you. I'm good. No thank you.
Alright, so we're going to move to number 8.
9.
9? Did
9.
I lose one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, you're right. Number 9.
Number 9. Number 9's so bad, Ken doesn't even want to mention it.
So, for me, number 9 is Garmbel Iblis. And maybe I just haven't found a good way to really use him. But for me, he's great if you want to do some setup turn 1, but you get a bunch of command tokens equal to the command value. If you can't use those tokens right away, you've lost his utility. You get it again in the 5th round, I think it is. If your ships are gone, it doesn't matter. If you have smaller command 1 ships, you're really not getting a lot out of him. You need command 2 ships, I think, to really make him kind of more useful. But that's my take on it. I think in a lot of cases you get a bunch of command tokens, they sit there, wait, and if you're not utilizing your commands that you pull out in your first turn 1, turn 2, okay, now you're getting rid of things that you just put onto the ship to begin with in terms of the command tokens.
Yeah. I will have more comments about him in a few minutes. So my number 9 is Mon Mothma. And it's just hard to build a list around her. Like, Rebels have a lot of ships that have evades. But they all want different commanders. Or they want to be spending the evade not on defense but on offense. So I just find it difficult to build a list with her. For her point cost, which is 30, there are far better commanders for 30 points. Because I would classify her as, actually most of these that we've already talked about, as defensive commanders. And there is one very specific better defensive commander for the same cost. So if I'm building a list, I would have to have a really good reason to use her, and there isn't one.
Alright, so we go on to number 8 now, and for me, that's Mon Mothma. So, like we said earlier, I think we're going to have a lot of very similar commanders in similar spots.
Yes.
Same thing. I mean, in most cases, you need the evade tokens to make Mon Mothma worth it.
To do anything specifically.
Yeah, and with a lot of your ships, there are better commanders to use. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to, is there a bigger rebel ship that has an evade that you can use? No, not really. Yeah, you're using small stuff with her, which is fine. But then, like I said, there's other commanders you can use which are going to get better utility out of it. So, and one thing I didn't think about, the point cost, 30 points. That's a lot for a commander. Are you really getting a lot out of it? Probably not. I would agree with you there. So, yeah, pretty much everything you said, double it for me. So, Mon Mothma for number 8.
So my number 8 is Garm. So our our bottom 4 are all the same and just slightly. It's really hard when, honestly, we could have just started with these are number 8 and just thrown all of them together.
We could have, yeah.
They're easy to find because they're all sitting in my binder because they never come out. Garm, I'm sure, is a good commander for some person, but I just find the balance point of, like what you were saying, how many commands that you have to how many tokens you get. Like, you need to have a certain command value ship, but then if you're using those type of ships, your ships are bigger and they want different commanders anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, like, oddly enough, it's also like what you said. Like, I like having tokens, but I plan what my dials are ahead of time to know that I need a token in the future. So, like, a lot of things like my squadron pushers, my carriers, I'll start off with a nav knowing that I'm not going to probably be using my squadrons turn 1, and then I keep that as a token. Well, if I already have my command value worth of tokens done, then that's a wasted turn. That's just a completely wasted dial, because what else am I going to be doing? I can't save it as a token. I probably don't want to speed forward into death. Like, I wouldn't use them. So, that's my number 8. On to 7. Is your number 7 a useful commander?
I think the answer to that question is yes, but not in my hands. So for me, the number 7 commander is Leia Organa. I put her down here for
big surprise. Same.
Is it really? That's funny.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you why I put her down here. 38 points, and you really restrict what you can do because you can only do one thing with your ship. And although it makes it really good, whatever your ability is, you get a super awesome capability with one command. And that's it. And if it's not the command you really want to use, you've lost out on it. I think there's ways to leverage Leia that would work remarkably well. I don't know that that's my play style. That's my takes. What's your thoughts on Leia?
So Leia starts coming in. So the ones that we already talked about, I'll never use. Leia, I think, is underused, and the reason she's underused is because she is overcosted. Mm-hmm. She has the same problem Tarkin has. It's just, why are they so expensive for what they do? I have a lot of respect for Leia due to the fact that I've played Leia a lot in hands of people that are extremely good with them, or good with her. So I've played John from Can't Get Your Ship Out, Geek19 on the forums, when he was like using her very competitively because he was going to bring her to Worlds, and he does extremely. He not many people can do it. He is extremely good with Leia, and I have a big respect for him and her when he's using her, and I wish that she was more useful, because she would be a really good commander, especially for all the Rebel small nonsense ships that are, setting a dial one at a time. Mm-hmm. She's great. Not at that cost, though, when there's other better commanders.
And in my hands, it's just...
Well, I think when you brought them, you brought a bunch of big ships, which makes her extremely hard to use, because big ships want to be using multiple dials and tokens all at once, and she limits that.
Now, you really, with Leia, you want to use hammerheads and CR90s, stuff like that. Just because, again, you get the smaller ships out, you can really focus on utilizing the one command. And like I said earlier, I think she's a very useful commander, but I'm going to agree with you. She has a similar problem to Tarkin. Very, very expensive. And I think you drop her...
She's really good with Yavaris.
Yes, very much so.
But there's other things that are better with Yavaris, so...
Alright, so on we go to Commander number 6 on the Rebel side. So for me, that is Commander Sato. Not for John. Okay. So I have Sato down here. I actually like Sato. I like the idea of running your A-Wings in, right up to the opposing ships to flip a couple dice to some black dice. That's awesome. I love how conceptually he works. I think you can bring some good stuff, and I'm now at the spot with the remaining 6 commanders. I kind of rather like all of them. Now it becomes down to a what ships or fleets am I trying to build. I do have to point out at this stage I have flown Imperials significantly more than I've flown Rebels, so for me this is still kind of understanding all the different ships and everything else. Having said that, if you're running a bunch of good squadrons, and usually your A-wing stuff, Taicho, Shara, you're going to bring them in just to get those abilities to make those shots at longer range, turn red dice into black. Why not? I mean, that's awesome stuff. I think there's certain things I haven't quite figured out with Sato yet, and that's probably why he's down towards the bottom. But I know I've seen you use him and other folks that I've played against where same thing, just, man, I'm getting myself tore up at longer ranges.
I have lots to talk about Sato when I get to Sato. So my number 6 is the, I believe, another general. The Rebels have a lot of generals.
They really do.
General Riken. And personally, I actually think he's one of the strongest, if not strongest, Rebel leaders. Except I hate him. I hate him so much. The only reason he's so high on this list is because he's actually good. I personally choose not to run him. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. I've gone entire tournaments that the only commander that I face is Riken. It's not fun. Let me say, I hate him. He's very strong. And all those other commanders that we talked about so far, that cost 30 points, and are defensive commanders, why would you ever bring them when you can bring Riken? Right. Riken works on ships, Riken works on unique squadrons. It doesn't matter what speed I'm going, it doesn't matter what defensive tokens I have. I can run something in front of you, know that it's going to be there when I need it, it can die, I can let it go off, and then I take it off the board. Cool. And you can do this with like stupid things, like I could run a transport in front of you, eat up a bunch of fire to lock you in place, use a scatter, and then on the next turn you could try to kill it again, and if you somehow kill it, then I can just Riken it, and then guess what? You're still not moving. So he can lock ships on I just don't like him. But I have to respect him because I've played him more than any other commander ever. Like, every person I've faced in a tournament has Riken. Riken, number 6.
So, on to number 5. For me, number 5 is Admiral Raddus. The reason Raddus is number 5 for me is the same reason that Riken is number 6 for you. I hate Raddus. I think as a commander, he's great. Honestly, it's the ability to deploy ships and just take stuff out. I think when the Super Star Destroyer first came out, you and I played a larger game, and you just dropped MC-75s right around it and just took that Super Star Destroyer out in like 2-3 turns, and I hated that. Now, having said that, I have to respect the ability and firepower of Raddus, because good God, you can do a lot. Now, they've kind of toned him down a little bit with the most recent FAQ, so he's not as crazy as he may have been. He can't drop Starhawks, as much fun as that might be. We should do that just for fun, drop a Starhawk, but, no?
No, you don't want to do that.
I get to do it. How about that?
Okay.
No. But I like the ability to move with what you can do. You can really gain control of the board with Raddus pretty easily, and I think that's one of the key abilities he has. Great capability, great admiral. I just don't like him because I've been on the receiving end of him one too many times.
Big surprise. I have a lot to say about Raddus, who's higher up on my list.
I figured as much.
Okay, so number 5 for me is Commander Sato. He is not this high on the list because he's overpowered, and he's not on this list because I even think he's good. I just think he's a lot of fun. And I wish he was better. But yeah, he's just a lot of fun. He is like a Rube Goldberg of the Rebel Alliance. Like, you gotta have ships that can use his ability at long range, so you need red dice ships, but you also need ships that can possibly throw black dice crits at long range. So you're like limiting what type of ships you can have. And then you need a fighter wing, but you don't really need fighters because you're not really a fighter player, but you just need fighters to trigger it. So you need fighters that can move far to get near a ship so then you can fire along. He's just a fun concept. And I just enjoy building fleets with him, even though I don't think he's necessarily good. I just enjoy it. I'm always like, every time something new with the Rebels come out, I'm like, how can I make Sato work with this? One day I'll get Sato to like really work, but that's not today. He actually works amazingly at 500 plus point games, because then you have the ships and the fighters there to make him work. At 400 points, it kind of limits just with how many fighters you need and how fast Imperial and Rebels kill fighters. I don't know, he's just fun. That's why he's where he is.
Alright, so on to number 4. So for me, number 4 is Kirsta Agate. I have to be honest, I have not actually flown her yet, but I have just kind of played around looking at what she could do. So I can't really speak too much to actual experience. All I can do is talk about what's kind of gone through my heads. My view is that what she's going to bring is going to just help out principally one ship. So, because her ability just gives, I believe it's just the flagship, one defense token that's not a scattered. So, 20 points, one ship, you're helping her out, or that particular ship out. It seems interesting. I'm not sure how I can leverage that in some cases. You can grab another, double up in some defense tokens and whatnot. But again, without me actually having played her in practice, I can't speak too much about that. On the receiving end, though, I know you've played her once or twice in the Starhawks, and wow, she's mean. Especially when you get that extra salvo token thrown into play.
Yes. So, she's higher up on my list, so I'll talk about her when I get there. My number 4 is Admiral Akbar. If you want to play red dice, there is no better commander than the good old It's a Trap. He works with almost all the Rebel ships. He is very expensive. So if you were to run him, you're not running squadrons. So for me, if I want to play long range, and if I'm not going to play squadrons for the Rebels, I would choose Admiral Akbar. He's just like that. So really, if you look at it, the top 4 for both my Imperial and my Rebels are, do I want to play no fighters? This is who I want to be. If I want to play fighters, this is who I'm using. That's kind of how I go. So he fits into number 4. I want to use red dice, and I don't want to play fighters. I will use Admiral Akbar.
Okay, so we're now moving into the top 3. And I think we've only got one left on both of us that we haven't, one of us hasn't used yet. So for me, number 3 is General Riken. Now, as much as John hates General Riken, I actually like him for the exact same reasons John hates him. I can block another ship. I get to keep one of my unique squadrons out just a little bit longer. Basically you just tack on a whole bunch of extra damage, keep a ship obstructing something else, gain the objective points if you want to farm out a couple different things. Yeah, there's some definitive benefits to being able to use Riken. I've used him a couple times, and it irritates people, and I think that's why why I enjoy using Riken. But it is one of those things where you don't want to throw everything in all at once, because you're just going to lose quite a bit, and that's not necessarily fun on the Rebel side.
Yeah, I just don't like him. He's frustrating, and I'm like, he's still the Rebels' best commander, like competitively. Personal opinion, best Rebel commander competitively, and he's gone through multiple layers of severe nerfs.
Yes,
like severe nerfs, and I still think he needs to be nerfed. But that's just me. Okay, so on to my number 3. You've already mentioned him. It's Admiral Raddus. I started playing Raddus less than a year ago. It was like my first major switch, because I jump back and forth between Rebel and Imperial. So I started using him right before our channel started. I wanted to bring him to last year's round of tournaments, and I did, and I learned a lot about him. I run him differently than a lot of people did. I like running a big ship and then dropping in a big ship, and then if I have any other small ships, they're there for support. So when his recent change and nerf happened, it didn't affect me. I was already dropping off a big flagship with a big ship in. And now I get to do it at distance 2 instead of distance 1, which was absolutely fine with me. I've used multiple iterations of it. I've done double MC75s. I've done Liberty, dropping an MC75, and then I also enjoy putting him on a Starhawk. I call it the Hate Hawk. Starhawk comes in, and then it drops an NC-75 on you. Like, it's already powerful, and then here's another tank ship that you have to deal with all at once. I really enjoy it, and one of the reasons why I switched to him was I played him a bunch at Worlds, the last Worlds that took place, and I lost every single game bad against the Raddus drops. So, that's why he's in my number 3 now.
I hate Raddus.
Okay, right. On to our top 2.
Top 2. So number 2 for me is Admiral Akbar. You cannot get over the fact you're throwing extra red dice out the sides of your ships. For me, I kind of find it interesting and amusing going back a ways when West End Games was still producing the role-playing materials. One of the fun things that was brought up was the Akbar slash, where your MC-80s would do a quick turn and just fire out the sides and take out Star Destroyers or fly right between them and flak out the sides. So for me, it's kind of fun to see that in action in a game. But I know I've used Akbar with assault frigates. I've used him with the MC-80, the Home 1 version of it. I haven't used him with the Starhawk yet. I kind of want to, because that just do some really devastating damage. But the only limitation that you really have with Akbar is you're eliminating your ability to do a double arc. So if you don't really have a good double arc shot, but you've got some good side arc shots, it's great. It gives you, sometimes you have to think about it. Do you want to take the double arc at a certain range, or would you rather get the 2 extra red dice? Depending, again, on the shots. Everything depends in this game on what's available, what's not. But Akbar I just thoroughly enjoy. He's a lot of fun to fly. He impacts all the ships in your fleet, and you just get to roll the extra red dice. And as you guys know, my red dice are usually pretty good. My blue dice, not so much. So for me, Akbar's my number 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, your red dice are always hot.
Yeah, that's why I like Akbar.
My number 2. Yeah, I don't. He murders. Your red dice are... You did something to him. Okay, I'll joking aside, my number 2 is General Dodonna. General Dodonna is actually kind of like my default admiral across the board for any Rebel fleet. And that is because he's cheap, and it doesn't matter what you're bringing, he works with it. Because if you're attacking and killing ships, eventually you're going to roll criticals and then you get a fish for them. If they land on an asteroid, you get a fish for it. If you have a critical effect ship, you get a fish for it. If you have fighters, Rebels, pretty much everything they have is bombers, you get a fish for a crit. It's great, and I love running him with like just straight plain generic Y-wings. So he's my default, I'm only bringing ships type of admiral, and hey, I got fighters, let's bring some fighters. He just works with everything, and he's cheap, and yeah, I just enjoy it. Drawing 4 cards and then handing your opponent the worst thing possible is great. If you've already blown through their shields, obviously because you're a crit, here's a double damage, here's another double damage, here's another double damage. You kill things really fast. Or, I really like where you are, drop to speed 0, and now you won't have defense tokens the next turn. Or, what's even a lot of fun is when you're facing like a super Star Destroyer, and you're like, oh, that side that has 6 shields? Drop it to 0. He's just mean, and he's a lot of fun, and he is my number 2.
So we're going to go to our top Rebel commander. Number 1 for me is General Dodonna. A lot of the exact same reasons John brought up. When you really come down to it, when you're drawing those crits, you're pulling 4 cards out of the deck of, was it 50? 52, I think, damage cards?
52.
52 damage
Same
cards.
size as
a regular standard deck cards. So when you start looking at the statistics of what you wind up pulling and how much of a range you actually get, you get a little bit more of a capability to make some decisions on how you want to defeat your opponent. You can do crazy damage with structural, or if there's a particular type of crit that you might find more useful, you could leverage that as well. And if you want to do something like a TRC 90, when you get to change that 1 red die into something else, maybe you want to do a crit just to be able to pull 4 cards out. What do I want to actually do? There's a good number of structural damage cards in that damage deck. So you do have the ability to just say, yeah, all right, I'm going to pull this out. Doesn't always work that way, but with the number of times you're pulling, the top 4 cards up, like, what do I feel like giving John today? You could do a lot with Dodonna. So he's definitely really mean, like you said. At the end of the day, he works with everything, and fighters, squadrons. Assault proton torpedoes, I think, is one of our favorite ways to leverage getting those crits, and then you're not even having to deal with getting through the shields at that point. So yeah, he's been good since the game came out, and it's a massive amount of damage that you can pour into the Imperial or opposing Rebel fleets. So Dodonna would be my number 1.
Okay, number 1. So Dodonna was my number 1 until a couple months ago. My number 1 is the newly released with the Starhawk Agate. I think she's great. Right now, I enjoy building fleets around her, and she's good with any Rebel big ship. What's the weakness for a Liberty? You only have 1 redirect. Hey, take another redirect. Mm-hmm. What's the problem with MC 75s? You have 1 brace. Why don't you take 2 braces? What's the problem with MC 80s? They're not tanky enough. Let's give them another brace. Starhawk, you can completely change your defense suite with the titles, and you can add another brace or redirect or whatever you need. She also is, she has some flexibility because you don't need to declare with her what you're choosing until you deploy the ship. So you can see what your opponent has first and then decide on what you want to take. For example, with my 1 Starhawk that has the expert shield text, if your opponent basically is going to be relying on only fighters dealing damage, take another redirect. Have 3 redirects, and you can cancel like multiple things all the time. The rest of her ability, which I don't even necessarily leverage, is also huge. She is basically a built-in ECM to toss 1 token out.
I forgot about that, yeah.
If you're going speed 1 or more. She costs 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm running a Starhawk, I'm pretty much running her on it. If I'm running, I know I've used it a couple times on my channel, my MC75 Y-Wing Swarm, I'm really hard-pressed to choose, do I want Dodonna or do I want her? Because she's going to make my MC75 survive. The Y-Wings are still going to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can survive more. Like, she's amazing. And right now, she's my number 1 Rebel commander to pick.
All right, well, that's our complete list of where we are ranking the Rebel commanders. We didn't actually match up on any of them this time through, but they were all very, very close. I think a lot of cases were off by 1.
Our bottom, 5, we could have just reshuffled them, and they all would have been the same. The bottom 5 pretty much just stay in your binder. So, I mean, it was very difficult for me to determine which one was worse than the other when I was ranking them at the end. It's just, however, I pulled the cards and put them in the stack.
I almost did the exact same thing. And at one point I was debating, do I do them alphabetically? Do I shuffle them? Yeah. But so there's our complete list of where we rank the Rebel commanders. Please throw in the comments below your thoughts, if you agree, disagree, and we'll talk back to you over the comments on our thoughts and whatnot. Like, subscribe to the video, send in some comments on other things you'd like to see us do. But other than that, I hopefully you enjoyed it. So.
Also, if there's anything else you'd like to see us talk about with quarantining and staying at home right now, we're a little bit limited in how we want to play. So if there's another video of something you would like us to talk about, let us know, and we'll try to get around to it.
All right, so you've been enjoying our series that we've been doing from home during the pandemic. So until next time, I'm Ken.
I'm John.
And you've been watching Ion Radio.